Good evening, trading addicts. Welcome to the weekly watch list. This is Jeff Kohler, aka Option Addict, from over at www.tradingaddicts.com. Here's a quick look at the week ahead. So we've got the range in the S&Ps dialed in. So if you're looking for a bias in terms of what direction the market's going to take on, I'd really wait for prices to get outside of what we saw in terms of last week's range. Here's the higher end, which is up towards 1277 in S&P cash. The lower end down near about 1263, 62, right in that vicinity. The trends are still intact, which we've been watching, and I continue to watch this Russell, which has held on to its longer-term trend, but saw another test down beneath that on Friday. Early weakness. That Russell continues to be a signal that concerns me in terms of the strength of this trend going forward. But part of me believes that we'll see one more push up in equities, and that would be the S&P, the NASDAQ, the Dow, probably up to a new relative high. And I can see it setting up to where the Russell does not participate, which I think will be a pretty significant divergence. We've also been watching the VIX, which has yet to confirm, but I still want to watch the VIX for a pop above and a close up here north of 1825 to confirm more of that bearish sentiment. But heading into this week, guys, I think you saw a lot of traders position last week and start to take off, a few positions, me included, starting to look to position themselves for an upcoming correction. I don't know if we're going to see that correction this week. So in terms of the way I see it going forward this week, you still want to play the individual setups. And from my analysis, after going over thousands of stocks this evening, unfortunately, the best setups are in small caps, the $10 and under stocks that we have normally talked about. So I've got quite a big list here that we'll look at. I'll take you through the price patterns, then I'll also post the individual small cap stocks that I like on the website, as well as buy the dip and sell the rip setups. But there's a lot of good price patterns that I want to take you through. So let's start there. Number one is ZAG. We talked about this setup pretty much for the second half of last week, but a nice little triangle breakout, some good volume with prices getting up towards a new closing high in ZAG. Good volume up here, so watch for prices to hold that 875 level into weakness, and if they do, I think you want to buy a dip in ZAG. USU, which as a disclaimer, I've got a long position in. If you take a look at the volume, I think prices look really good here to go higher. You've got a reference point up towards 650, and if prices get above that, they're going to get pretty active to the upside. So that's a trade I don't think it's too late to take. Keep an eye on USU this week. I also like Callon Petroleum a lot. If you look at the 6-month chart here, a good consolidation pattern, volume on the rise. So look for a breakout of this little setup starting tomorrow. I hate to admit it, but I spent a lot of time looking at the solars. And if you've been on TA Live or any of the live webinars, I've been adamant about not trading these to the upside. But I think this will be the week that they'll see a little bit of a pop. Something that would send a stock like JASO up here towards its 50-day moving average. And I think we'll see that. Good volume as traders get positioned for a little bit of a pop above this 720 level, which we should see some pretty good movements in JASO. And I'm also watching LDK. Again, I'm not a big fan of the solar stocks, but I think there's a good day trade long setting up here. A couple others, UMC. Starting to break out of a little consolidation pattern. Navios Maritime, which to me looks like it's setting up for a reversal, and volume's been pretty active. The shippers they look like they're starting to turn a corner here. Navios is one of my favorite long setups, so look for a breakout this upcoming week north of 550. I think that's a long you'd probably want to be looking at. Also, DNDN, we talked about this on Friday. I didn't get a chance to enter a position, but if you look at the setup here, a big multi-month consolidation pattern. The stock spent the majority of the year coiling up for this big breakout, and I don't think that this 8% move that we saw on Friday is all of it. So once it gets above the 200-day moving average, you'll probably see some more upside, but I'd almost look to see if this opens up a little bit lower tomorrow. I'd buy any kind of a dip in DNDN with a little bit of a longer term time horizon, probably looking out into February with some February calls. I also like the setup in Netflix, and you'll have to dial down and look at the 30-minute chart for this, but you can see prices have coiled up pretty well through here, and I think this might be a good day trade this week to where either we get a breakdown of this bigger descending triangle or the pattern's invalidated and prices start to break up and away. That's one of my favorite setups that I'd be looking for with the weekly options this week. We'll talk more about that on the live webinar tomorrow. Also RIM, where we have this week's expiring options as along. We've got some calls here. The setup looks pretty good, and one that I think goes quite a bit higher. Some big volume coming in. If Research in Motion closes above 62.5, then I'd look for a move to 65, which is what I'm targeting this week. So RIM looks good. EQIX, which I'm not certain that this is going to move this week, but I think there's a pretty good chance that we'll see some volatility and a break away from this consolidation range. And down here is the spot where you want to buy it, between about 81 and 82. So I want to keep an eye on that one this upcoming week. HRS, I'd be looking for a breakout here. The stock's seen a lot of volume, and if you look at this, another stock that's spent multiple months consolidating in a really tight range. So a break away from this contracted volatility should send the stock up towards 50, maybe even higher. So Harris is another one that I like. Federal Express, I've really had no interest in the stock, for the last few months since the last long that we called back through here. But now it looks like it might be setting up to get up towards the highs. And I think a long here makes sense because you've got a couple of levels of support going on through here. Not only that, but you aim for the highs, and if you get close enough to 97, 98, the stock goes to 100. It's kind of a simple concept, and FedEx seems to be positioned the best for that. So FedEx I like. In terms of reversals, I'd watch this little Head & Shoulders and Decker's Outdoor. Horrible spot to short coming into tomorrow, but into a little bit of a lift, let's say above 80, up to 81, maybe 82. I like that a lot better. So into strength, I'd be short Deck. PCP, which is another long that I'm in. This one hasn't gotten too far away, but if the market starts to react a little bit to the upside, this should see some follow through. So Precision Cast Parts I still like. In terms of a breakdown, lender processing services, big volume on this breakdown, and just now starting to get outside of this range. So even though it was down 4%, I don't think you're necessarily chasing too far. But if prices can get back up to about 30, that's the optimal low risk spot right there, right at 30 to sell a rip. Two more analog devices. So semiconductors, the semiconductor index, in fact, closing at a 52-week high on Friday, despite the fact that everything's been kind of soft last week. It's pretty interesting, and ADI is one of the few that hasn't broken out of this range yet, so look for a breakout there. I think volume looks pretty good. And last but not least, Seagate. Now, I'm not sure which way this one's going to go, but it's at a manageable spot if it's going to break out. If not, I think it's an easy move to see some follow through to the downside if it breaks down. Ultimately, I'm going to play the reactionary role and see which way this consolidation pattern breaks and then play that accordingly. So again, I could go on and on. I have a couple of buy the dip setups, sell the rip setups. Most importantly this week, to make sure that the market holds up, you got to keep an eye on financials, and in particularly the BKX. Banking index has got to stay up, and if that's the case, if financials can recover from that little sell-off that we saw on Friday, this will be the week that everyone's positioned for the correction that doesn't happen. That's doesn't take place. And small caps, guys, stocks under $10. I mean, that I think is going to be the place to play right now. The lotto plays, basically. Those are going to be the stocks that move 10, 20% in a given day. I've got a list of about 24 that I love, so come check those out on the website. Anyway, guys, hopefully you have a fantastic week in trading. As always, this has been the Option Addict. That's been my watch list. Thanks for watching, and have a profitable week.